This episode of Hero Club is supported by our good friends over at Mage Hand Press. Check them out at magehandpress.com and buy their High Seas supplement for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition to Shanghai your own group of adventurers. If you like Hero Club, remember to rate and review on your preferred platform and tell your friends.
Welcome to Hero Club. I'm Nick Williams.
And I am George Primavera.
George and I have been playing D&D together for years.
Now, a lot of people think you need to be a big, huge nerd boy to play Dungeons & Dragons.
But in reality, you just have to be willing to spend 4 hours of your own time on a weekday trashed on cheap beer cross-legged around a coffee table.
I lost a game of Flip Cup in 2012, so I had to buy all the books and learn how to be Dungeon Master. My dad was disappointed.
Yeah, he was. But after a game or two, we realized that it's actually a really fun and effective way to tell an awesome story.
Yeah, it's like long-form improv, but you kill more people.
Here's what you need to know. George creates a world and the framework for a cool story.
And the players, like Nick, create characters beforehand, all with special abilities, sometimes magical, sometimes not, and they adventure through the story as best they can, trying not to die.
We, the players, roll dice to see if our improvised actions fail or succeed, trying to beat a number in George's head that he promises he doesn't change at will.
But at the table, I am God, my game, my rules.
Okay, so it's as nerdy as you thought. You know what? Just off, man.
Whoa,
right off,
all right,
okay?
Nick, maybe don't tell everybody to F off. And it's not that nerdy. I mean, we get rid of all that stupid math, and we add music and sound effects and stuff like that, so, you know, it's cool.
Anyway, these stories do follow a linear plot, so if you want to know what's going on, start at the beginning of any season you like and have fun with it.
Without further ado,
welcome to Hero Club! Yeah!
'Twas the final hour of our story, and Muldoon and his crew did all they could to prepare for the arrival of Queen Olivia, sure to rolling out a red carpet. One way or another, it would all end there on that beach. Only time would tell if all the trials and tribulations had been worth it.
the stranded crew of the Old Wives' Tale bustles around the beach, making ready for the Lich Queen Olivia's inevitable arrival. A few members of the crew have constructed several longboats with the help of the mother and her vines, readied by the shoreline for when Churchill is able to return with the ship. Others have begun setting up stations with ammunition and powder beyond the tree line, camouflaged by the thick flora. But though anxieties are high, some of the tension is alleviated by Beatrix's sudden appearance just a moment before.
Beatrix, you're back! Oh, this is so exciting! We missed you. What have you been up to? Did you go to that special camp thing and you learned to lift stuff better?
Lilia, it's so good to see you too. Well, it's less like a camp. It's more like a monastery? I don't know, but it's cooler than that. It was so much fun. I learned so much. Are you okay?
So I was in a very dark place when I sent the scarab. It's much better than we thought, but it's still not ideal, considering that the Queen Porcine herself should be here. So we're preparing, and your help will be very much appreciated.
Beatrix spots Vivian laying unconscious in the sand. She lifts his ear. Hey, big guy. Time to wake up.
So good to see you. He's not asleep. I think you got the wrong impression there. He was actually very badly injured in the last fight.
Yes, Beatrix. In fact, he has been courting death as a dance partner ever since you left.
It has been quite a ride.
Oh no, well, as Professor Blankenship says, death is but a curtain to be swept aside.
And Beatrix pulls out a healing potion, uncorks it, and pours it in Vivian's mouth.
Vivian is still for a moment, and then sits upright, coughing violently.
Bloody awful that was.
It's nice to see you too, Vivian.
What are you doing back with this lot?
Well, I got the scarab and Mordecai said that I should come, and I wanted to help.
Well, I hope wherever that old skin changer took you, you learned from colder killers than me.
Oh, you'd be surprised. And maybe I'll show you one day.
I'm counting on it.
Vivian nods respectfully.
Suddenly, Me appears behind the group, tapping Bastion on the shoulder. Excuse me, big fast one.
Ha! Oh, right, me. Hello? You're looking good, you're awake now?
Oh yes, just a little bump. Little bump, see? He turns his head and he has a very severe wound on the back of his head.
Oh, looks great, me.
Me does not feel a thing.
That did not surprise Bastion.
The mother wishes to speak with you. Oh, all of you. Ooh, such large ears. He is mesmerized by Beatrix's tall white ears.
Beatrix runs her paws over her head and kind of twirls her ears to the side. Thank you. No one really comments on my ears.
Well, they are glorious. No, wife, nothing. As you look at the tree line, you see Me's, quote, wife, unquote, pegged into the sand. The inanimate coconut's makeshift beak flopping open. She is very angry.
What does the mother want to say?
Ah, yes, come with me. Me leads the group through the forest, which is even more lush and vibrant than it was before. There are now lots of budding, exotic flowers hanging from trees and poking out of the ground, and all of the plants move gently and constantly as if they are all breathing as one. Even the tunnel leading down into the mother's chamber is different, covered in tiny wildflowers and lit by floating bright blue spores. In the chamber itself, the water is clean and sparkling, completely calm, almost like glass. The stone pathway leading through the room is now covered in thick grass. The blue spores gather in multitudes on the ceiling around some effervescent fungi, creating a calming blue glow. And Me jogs over to the white altar, and a small vine gently places itself just an inch into Me's ear. The nude platypus stands upright and beams at the party with new intelligence. You've done it. Thank you, children. I've already begun funneling purification magic into the sea through the channeler. The Black Water's advance has stopped, and I've even begun to push it back some.
That's good to hear. How do we make sure that it stays that way?
As long as the diamond stays with me, I'll be able to continue to push it back. Eventually, Blackwater will become nothing but a legend. That is, until the next power-hungry fool seeks to relieve me of the channeler. Speaking of which, she's on her way, is she not?
So I've been told. We're setting up our defenses right now, and we will hold the island. I am sure of it.
I'm sure you will. You all look a bit worse for wear, though, now that I'm peeking around at you through Me's eyes.
Vivian almost died.
You do appear to be the weakest of the five.
I'm doing just fine.
Well, let's be fair, Lilia. You both almost died.
I don't know, I think I'm doing pretty well. And a little bit of blood starts to drip out of Lilia's nose, unbeknownst to her.
Yes, right. Well, if you'd like, I can sew some of those wounds up for you, perhaps reinvigorate your magical spirits, for those of you that dabble.
I think my magical spirit could use some invigorating.
Vivian rolls his eyes.
Simply wade into the pool.
Lilia takes a bit of a running start and belly flops into the pond.
Interesting definition of wade.
Vivian walks into the pool.
Bastion and Drake follow.
Beatrix looks at me and then at the rest of the crew, shrugs her shoulders, and walks into the pool.
The vine withdraws from Me's ear for a moment. Oh, what are you doing, mother? Oh, sure. And he hops into the pool as well. The glassy water begins to glow a bright white. The blue spores descend from the ceiling, and slowly, everybody's wounds begin to close up, their fatigue begins to dissipate, and you all feel as if you've taken a long, long rest.
Mother, one more thing.
Yes, child? The vine reinserting itself into Me's ear.
I do hate to ask for more things from you. You have done so much. But, in the scrum yesterday, I noticed Archpriest Ezra, you know, the eagle. He was using a sort of magical necklace that seemed to allow him to cast spells even better than usual. Last time I saw him, you were pulling him into the deep. Is there any way you could recover that jewel?
The necklace?
Yes, not Ezra. I don't want to see him ever again.
Oh, good, because I definitely can't get him back. But his necklace? Give me a moment. The vine withdraws from Me's ear, and there's silence for a moment.
Well, how's your head, Me?
Oh, all better! He turns around. His wound has completely closed up.
Good, that's good.
How are you?
Oh, fine. You know, nothing much.
Beatrix turns to Lilia.
So he has a wife?
The vine reinserts itself into Me's ear. A vine streams in from down the tunnel, holding Ezra's necklace aloft. A diamond at the center and 4 garnets on each end of it.
Oh, yes, that's the one. Drake walks over and plucks it from the vine.
A powerful artifact, this.
Do you know what it does? I just know it is good for spells or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's the weak link. We studied that in class. It was like 101.
Oh, really? What does it do?
If you're casting a spell on someone, you can cast it on 5 people instead of 1. And it's way easier to hit them with it.
Very good, child. The other 4 targets of the spell will be beholden to the weakest of the 5.
The question is, which one of you magicians deserves it?
Lilia has stopped swimming laps in the pond and is gazing at the necklace.
Giving it to the person who deserves it hardly seems fair.
That's right, Lilia, I am giving it to you. And Drake tosses the necklace to Lilia.
She catches it. It's beautiful. And puts it around her neck.
We cannot celebrate yet. Your queen is on her way. If she... Me goes still and glassy-eyed for a split second, and then reels back in pain. The vine does the same, writhing and graying before your eyes. The spores above extinguish, the water begins to slosh up onto the grassy pathway, and smoke begins to billow out of the fungi above. Spores of deep black, and a voice reverberates around the room.
It would appear congratulations are in order, Captain. I see you've defeated my priest. My best priest. But I'm here now.
What is happening? What is happening?
Oh my hog, we've got to get to the shore! Drake leads the party sprinting out of the cave, pulling his cutlass as he does.
As you begin to run, the smoky black spores begin to creep into your lungs, and all of you begin to cough. Everybody make a constitution save.
17.
18.
9.
16.
4.
Vivian and Lilia begin to cough so violently that they are brought to their knees before being dragged along by the rest of the party. Both of you take 4 poison damage.
Vivian, give me the carnival's eye. You are not going to be without Lilia's healings this time.
Capital idea, old sport.
Vivian hands Bastion the carnivore's anti-magic eye.
Outside, the pirates find themselves in the middle of a rainstorm. Dark clouds that were previously far, far to the west now directly overhead. The mother's branches are flapping in a stiff breeze. A low rumble of thunder.
Drake leads the group towards the tree line, running as fast as he can.
As you do, you pass one of the ammunition stations behind the tree line, where about 10 pirates all stand stock still, all staring out to sea.
Well, come on, lads, to your quarters!
There's no response.
Bastion runs up to the crew, aggressively waving the pearl in their faces. Hey, come on! Come on!
As Bastion runs up, the pirates seem to shake from their reverie as the anti-magic field passes over them. But as they make eye contact with Bastion, they look back towards the ocean, and with screams of terror, begin to run away from the beach. As soon as they end up 30 feet past Bastion, they freeze once again.
Vivian grabs a raccoon and slaps him in the face.
He makes absolutely no reaction.
Now, salt me.
Drake, full of dread, pushes the last foliage away on the tree line and heads out onto the beach.
There is a wall of fog in the distance, hundreds and hundreds of feet out. As you look, 5 ships come into view. As their masts penetrate the fog, you see gigantic sigils of the Queen, Armada colors flapping in the breeze. All 5 ships appear to be man-o-wars. Everybody make a history check.
7.
8.
11.
20.
Nat 20.
Drake and Bastion, with their years and years sailing the seas, immediately identify all 5 ships.
Well, there's the HMS Humphrey,
Louise.
Wilfred,
Samuel.
and Gloria. My hog. They spared no expense.
More fog begins to roil over the surface of the ocean. Even as you look out, the waves begin to subdue, the water getting calmer and calmer until it's as if you're staring out at a lake. Then there's a very small figure in the distance that floats out in front of the center ship, the HMS Gloria. It gets larger and larger as it approaches, until it becomes very clear. It's Queen Olivia VIII herself, floating above the surface of the water, as if riding a dark cloud. The closer she approaches, the darker it gets in the sky. A lightning strike silhouettes the Queen, her dark collar becoming very visible, as she gets to not more than 150 feet away. And as she does, something begins to rise out of the water under her, a thick blue surface. The closer she gets, the more this thing begins to pop out of the water. Eventually, a 7 or 8 foot long fin protrudes, black-tipped and wicked-looking, and becoming fully visible underneath her as she just about comes ashore, is the most gigantic crustacean any of you have ever seen, easily the size of a building. The queen is now 20 feet up in the air, resting lazily on the gigantic lobster's head. She wears a long black gown with pink accents, a large resplendent crown that hangs off to the side just a bit, making room for a strapped porcelain mask that covers the right side of her face. Even 20 feet up on top of this lobster, you can tell that the portraits have not been accurate. Rather, the mother's depiction is the correct one. Her skin is pulled taut and sallow. As the lobster finally breaches the shore, the queen speaks again.
I must admit, I'm impressed. For such low-intelligent creatures, you have done very well for yourselves. But that time is at an end. Give me my phylactery, and I will allow you to live.
The disgusting blue head of this lobster underneath the queen begins to bubble and froth at the mouth.
Such a wonderful offer, but unfortunately I do believe we'll have to decline. I am so sorry, Your Majesty. And Drake mockingly bows very low.
Beatrix turns to Lilia, not particularly trying to whisper. What's the mask for?
Well, I don't think it's hiding anything nice looking, that's for sure. Look at her.
The queen hears this, and the air changes. Her flippant, carefree, intimidating demeanor switching to one of a seething rage.
Enough. I've had enough of all of you. I've had enough years of dealing with the whining of these insignificant, troublesome mammals. I am here, and your end has come.
Like the wind, Bastion goes sprinting towards the giant crustacean and takes a leap straight towards the queen.
Bastion lands directly up on the lobster's head.
My mother always wanted me to perform for royalty, and he unloads right on her mask.
Bastion, your fist travels about 10 inches and impacts on an invisible wall. And as it does, this invisible wall shatters and your fist is carried forward. The queen, with a shocked expression on her face, reels back.
22.
Hit.
12.
Miss.
8 points of damage.
Bastion, the first punch connects, and the mask flies off the queen's face. The second punch misses, as the queen immediately goes to her knees, something Bastion isn't expecting. She covers her face with both hands.
Bastion winces and runs behind her 30 feet down the lobster's spine.
Beatrix takes a deep breath, centers herself, puts her hands above her head, and casts a volley of coconuts towards the lobster.
Coconuts begin to exit the tree line at a rapid pace, propelled by Beatrix's telekinetic powers. However, each coconut dings uselessly against the lobster's thick carapace.
Take that, coconut!
The queen shudders, holding her hands to her face still.
How dare you!
The queen, removing her hands, reveals a skeletal, sinewy, exposed visage. And as she turns her head towards her boats, her voice booms across the water.
Must I do everything? Fools, attack them!
The 5 man-o'-wars lurch forward, their sails full of wind.
Lilia gazes up at the queen and her lobster, a look of disgust on her face, and she raises her hands and casts fairy fire at the queen and the lobster.
Both are wreathed in a bright green glow.
Bastion, that was amazing! The way that mask just fell. Good job!
Bastion feels some inspirational warmth at the end of the lobster's tail.
Vivian, in a called shot, sends an eldritch blast at the lobster's eye. 21.
That is a hit.
11 damage.
Its left eye retracts.
Vivian sends another one right at Queen Olivia. 20.
Hit.
6 damage.
The eldritch blast grazes Queen Olivia's shoulder. She barely reacts.
Drake charges at the giant lobster and attempts to find a weak point in the lobster's armor with his cutlass. 28.
Hit.
37 damage. The cutlass finds a flap in the creature's armor and tears it down, peeling the armor off.
The lobster's head reels back, and more bubbles begin to exude from its mouth. The lobster, with one eye retracted and now a gaping wound in its side, shakes itself from side to side and flips its tail upwards and out of the water. Bastion, make a dex save.
26.
Bastion easily holds on to the tail as it tries to flip him off. The lobster begins to grasp around with its two gargantuan pincers. The first swipes at Drake. The claw slams into Drake and he takes 26 bludgeoning damage. The other pincer reaches out, and with the pincer outstretched, the lobster shoots forward through the sand, grabbing for Vivian. As the pincer reaches Vivian, he leaps up in the air and the claw slams shut underneath. The man-o'-wars in the distance continue to sail forward. They are now approximately 1,000 feet away from the beachhead.
Bastion runs up to the queen and attempts to throw her off. 18.
The queen flies off the lobster, impacting in the sand.
Bastion grabs a hold of the lobster's head and hunkers down.
Beatrix notices the ships approaching and goes closer to the waterline. Hold them off! I've got this! Beatrix kneels in the sand and starts muttering under her breath.
The queen picks herself up and dusts the sand off of her.
I really liked this dress.
Queen Olivia rests her hand upon her chest, and suddenly her feet pick up off of the sand, and she shoots into the air.
This has gone on long enough.
A dark energy ball forms in the queen's hand and begins to grow and grow and grow.
No, thank you. And Lilia raises both of her hands towards Queen Olivia, casting Hangover.
The queen waves her hand as if irritated, and there's no effect.
Vivian charges up an Eldritch Blast in each hand and claps them together, firing them at the queen. 20.
Hit.
20 again.
Hit.
A total of 21 damage.
The queen takes the hit, gritting her teeth, but continues to concentrate.
Drake dusts himself off and charges after the lobster once again, slashing down at its leg once more. 26.
Hit.
29 damage. Drake again finds purchase in a crack in the armor and drives the cutlass home with both hands.
The lobster responds immediately, wheeling around to face Drake and trying to grab him with one of its pincers. Drake, you take 16 damage as the monster grabs you in its claws, grappling you. It brings you closer and closer to its mouth, and its tentacles begin to flap outward, slithering all over your face. Can you make a Constitution save, please?
Nat 20. Oh, yuck! That's so gross!
Drake, amidst the flurry of tentacles from this creature's mouth, you see a dark purple ooze beginning to secrete, and it smells rank. The boats are now only 500 feet away as their sailing speed picks up, but Beatrix's eyes are now glowing.
How's this, Vivian? As she brings her arms back and fires them forward with two fists.
Suddenly, Beatrix is 3 inches deeper in the sand as a crater from nothing pushes her downward, and the water reflects a massive shockwave emanating from the rabbit. As it travels across the ocean, a wave begins to form, and this wave, by the time it reaches the man-o'-wars approaching, is approximately 50 feet high. You can assume that the captains of each vessel see this and begin to instruct their helmsmen to turn tail. However, the HMS Samuel moves a bit too late. As the other ships turn around, riding the wave backwards even further, the Samuel capsizes. There's a shattering of wood, and you see scores of blackjacks diving off the deck and into the water. All of the ships are now forced to make a gigantic loop, and their approach has been delayed.
A horrified expression comes over Vivian's face, and he's dumbstruck for a moment before shaking it off and then saying,
A bit fancy, but not bad.
Bastion reaches down and grabs a hold of the crustacean's eye stem and unleashes 4 punches. 25, 24, nat 20, 21.
4 hits.
45 points of damage.
Bastion brutalizes the lobster's face, and the gigantic monster drops Drake into the sand.
You long-nosed, gibbering salt gibbon.
The queen raises the dark ball of energy above her head and throws it downward. As it flies towards Bastion, little dark beams fire off of the main orb towards the rest of the party. But as the orb gets to about 30 feet away from Bastion, it fizzles, like a candle wick extinguished with 2 fingers. But Vivian, Lilia, and Beatrix are struck by a small, dark dart. Beatrix takes 4 damage, Vivian takes 4 damage, and Lilia takes 6.
I'd long wondered what happened to my pearl. I see you found it.
Ah! Stole it. Pirate.
Well, that's not really fair if you're fighting us from all the way up there. And Lilia slashes her hand down, casting Dispel Magic at the queen.
The queen begins to plummet out of the air, but as she does, her dress sort of inflates a bit, and she falls like a feather down into the sand.
Captain, you're doing a great job. Keep at it. I know it's tough, but when the going gets tough, you do it for stuff.
You do it for stuff. You're finally getting it, Lilia.
Vivian hucks 2 more Eldritch Blasts right at the queen. Nat 20. 19.
Both hits.
24 damage.
Drake launches himself up to his feet from his prone position and dives onto the leg again, stabbing down at it. 26.
Hit.
37 damage.
The lobster attempts to slam Drake into the sand, but Bastion's previous punch has disoriented and blinded the creature, and it's unable to get its bearings. The 4 remaining man-o'-wars wheel around and begin to head towards the beach once again.
Bastion continues his assault. 25. Nat 20. 25.
3 hits.
35 points of damage.
Bastion, describe it.
On each punch, Bastion feels himself gaining more leverage, and Bastion feels the beast begin to wane, grabs a hold, and rides the beast down to the ground, and as it lands, Bastion slides off of its tail, landing lightly onto the sand.
Where Bastion has punched, massive craters have expanded into spiderweb cracks in the creature's gigantic, thick shell, and it lays still, a few bubbles bursting from its mouth. The man-o'-wars are making their approach much more slowly this time, trying to pick up stragglers in the water as they grow closer and closer, now only about 300 feet out.
Beatrix focuses on the lobster and puts her paws up to her temples.
The lobster picks up out of the sand slowly, just an inch or 2 off the ground, its legs scraping the sand lazily.
Beatrix casts her paws out and throws the lobster on top of the queen.
The gargantuan crustacean crashes through the sand towards the queen, and she dives out of the way. The lobster crashes into the sand with a thud, and all is quiet.
Well done, Beatrix. That was so much easier than I thought.
And 5 copies of the queen crawl on top of the lobster's body and slide into the sand.
I spoke too soon.
All 5 images of the queen thrust their hands forward, and a massive blizzard blasts forward from her palms, heading directly for Beatrix. Beatrix takes 40 cold damage, going to her knees as she tries to resist being cast into the ocean. Beatrix's fur begins to clump together and freeze.
Upon realizing just how bad Beatrix is looking, Lilia glances down at her necklace and casts Mass Cure Wounds.
The queen, reacting to this, thrusts her hands forward.
Healing magic. You're getting desperate.
The spell is extinguished in Lilia's hand, and her healing magic fades away.
Vivian, get assaulted!
Vivian pays Lilia's encouraging words no mind and sends an Eldritch Blast at 2 of the Queen's copies chosen at random, hoping to hit the real one. 25?
1 Eldritch Blast passes through one of the copies, and it fades away.
28.
The other impacts in the real queen, the copies dissipating.
17 damage.
The queen is blasted 10 feet backwards and impacts in the sand, this time struggling to right herself. Vivian, you see dark flakes rising up into the air from the swine's face. There's now much more skeleton than there is skin.
Drake stealthily palms the pearl from Bastion's hand and charges at the queen, cutlass drawn.
You're at her.
Drake attempts to run her through with his sword. Nat 20. 56 damage.
What will the warrior do now? Without a leader for you months.
I'm sure we'll think of something. And Drake twists the blade.
The queen appears to burst into a million tiny dark particles. Her last scream echoing across the ocean, and she is gone. There's a moment of calm quiet, and then everybody's face turns out towards the beach. Members of the old Wives' Tale crew, woken from their reverie, now exiting the tree line. All eyes on the 4 man-o-wars now approaching. Me the platypus runs up to the party, his face covered in black soot, still coughing up a lung.
The mother is not ready. She will seal the island. She will seal it. You must flee. Flee into the water.
What the salt is this bloody half-duck talking about?
He hasn't been wrong before. Come on. And Drake sprints towards the water, diving headfirst into the waves.
The rest of the crew follows as vines begin to rise up out of the ocean, creating a dome-like structure that begins to expand downward towards the beachhead. Scores of the pirates begin to stream into the water, Beatrix using her telekinetic powers to keep a few of the more exhausted ones afloat, and thick wooden trunks begin to descend onto the shoreline, completely sealing off the island of the Mother. As everybody reaches about 40 feet out to sea, the dome begins to descend deeper and deeper into the water. The 4 gigantic Armada ships are now well within range and begin to turn to their sides, preparing to blow the swimming crew right out of the water.
None of that now. And treading water, Lilia raises both of her hands towards the ships, a thin film of ice covering each, as she casts Iceberg at the 4 ships.
4 gigantic bricks of ice begin to form in the water, and all 4 of the ships seem to run aground as their bows tip upwards towards the sky, suddenly immobilized. You see on the deck of each of the ships, soldiers running and pointing muskets down into the water now. And just before they're about to fire, there's a faint sound behind you. It begins to get louder and louder, like an engine whirring to life. And then suddenly, there's a blast of light, and the old Wives' Tale shoots out of a tunnel, crashing into the ocean in front of you. And you see Edgar Churchill puke over the side of the boat.
Why are you all swimming? This is the island, is it not? Oh, my honk!
Broadside!
You hear from the lower decks of the old Wives' Tale.
Give him a bloody broadside for Vivian all the way!
The cannons fire, and Bedlam the Goose, manning the gun deck, completely botches his job once again, and every cannon shell misses.
What are you waiting for? The imbecile's completely incompetent. Get aboard!
Vivian Stoker's gonna wear some bespeak as a bloody funny hat, I'll tell you that much.
Oh man, Vivian's gonna wear my beak as a bloody head, I'll tell you that much.
Climbing the ropes that Edgar has thrown to them, Drake and the crew scurry aboard the ship, heading towards their respective positions.
Even though the ships are completely immobilized, the musket fire is thick, and every member of the crew is forced downward, ducking behind barrels and banisters. Edgar immediately goes to Drake, Bastion, Lilia, Vivian, and now Beatrix as well.
I don't know how much time we have, but judging from the last teleportation, I would say 10 minutes. And those are some very big cannons.
Giving up on the musket fire, the Blackjacks have begun to wheel carronades onto the top deck and point them at the old Wives' Tale.
Drake grabs the helm and cranks it to the left, hard turning the old Wives' Tale away from the ships.
As they do, 4 purple-robed figures step onto the bows of the Armada ships and get to work melting the icebergs, holding the ships in place with beams of fire.
Lilia, give us a tailwind.
Aye, aye! And she directs her palms towards the sails, filling them with wind, as she casts Tailwind.
The old Wives' Tale takes off through the water, but the HMS Louise breaks free and is easily about to head the old Wives' Tale off. They are now on a collision course with the massive ship.
All beasts brace for impact!
I've got this.
Beatrix shoves Drake out of the way and takes the helm.
Everybody hold on to something!
And the old Wives' Tale lifts out of the water, up into the air, over the HMS Louise, the rudder of the ship crashing into the mast, and finally clears all of the ships, leaving hundreds of Blackjacks staring up, dumbfounded. The ship continues upward, the wind getting more intense, the rain flecking at everybody's cheeks. Everyone's vision is obscured, and then suddenly, everything goes quiet for a moment. The deck rises above the clouds, and the rays of sun warm the soaking wet crew of the old Wives' Tale. Beatrix turns to Drake.
Captain, sorry I pushed you.
No, Beatrix. You did exactly what any good pirate would do.
Bastion leans over the edge.
Each member of the crew abandons their duties and gazes out over the clouds.
Vivian stares out at the endless expanse of clouds, dumbstruck by the beauty and awesomeness of what he's just witnessed.
Uckle and Fanciful Bill the penguins move to either side of Vivian at the banister, both of them wearing masks from Vivian's cabin.
What? Uckle? Fanciful Bill? What the scat have I said about going into me bloody cabin? I'll have your feathers for spats, I swear!
Edgar comes up beside the rest of the crew. Well, should be about a couple more minutes before we boomerang back. How did it all go?
Well, let's just say there won't be a Queen Olivia the Ninth. And we all did a fine job.
Very well. What do we do next? I would recommend against going to Emporia. Changes in regime tend to be bumpy.
Well, we could always go back to Denacruz. They need a new bartender.
We can't go back to Denacruz.
Well, why ever not?
Well, it would seem the Queen arrived after we departed and sunk the whole place.
She sunk an island?
Yes. This was before we purified the phylactery. It is likely that her powers were far greater before. But such strength! Had she not needed to subdue an all-powerful nature spirit in order to deal with you all, well, I shudder to think what might have happened. There's a ticking sound that grows louder on the ship. All right, everybody, grab onto something. We're about to go back. The crew braces themselves and disappears in a flash of light in the middle of the sky. A little bit of cloud wisping upwards in a spiral. And the old wives' tale crashes into waters unknown, a 6 days journey out to the east. But the first thing they notice is not the open water. It's the 2 galleons on either side of them. To the left, the whirling dervish, with Tig and Tug waving from the helm. And to the right, you just hear a voice call out.
Drake, you bloody galah! Turned up right at the spot.
And you see Jack the Mouth aboard his ship, the Hurtful Word.
I learned a lot in school, but what just happened?
Long story. Old Vivian will cover it.
As all 3 pirate crews get their bearings, a fervent party breaks out across all 3 decks when the 3 ships find a small sandbar, dropping anchor and connecting all of their planks. Music is played, barrels are tapped, and Tig, Tug, Jack the Mouth, and the penguins put on an acrobatic display involving not 1, but 2 grapefruits. Drake gathers Bastion, Lilia, Vivian, Beatrix, and Edgar, and brings them all to his cabin for a debrief.
Bastion goes to a cabinet underneath the bust of Hilmar Breach and pulls out a very dusty bottle of rum and begins to pour everyone a stiff glass. We save this for this very occasion.
This is the bottle of rum that Captain Breach was saving for the day he retired, the day I would eventually take his place. But that day never came. Not the way he envisioned it, anyway. But here we are. And here I stand, in the presence of some of the finest pirates I have ever met. And I'm done. I'm done with it all. If I've learned one thing in this whole endeavor, it's what's important, and I belong with Val. So I'd like us all to raise a glass. To our new captain.
Lilia starts to raise her glass towards Bastion.
And Lilia realizes that everyone in attendance is raising their glass to her.
Lilia looks behind her for a second. Oh, me?
Yes, of course, you.
Bastion, why not you? You are first mate.
Lilia, I was never meant to be a pirate, and I was Drake's first mate. I love you all, but if he's not on the ship, neither am I. It seems as though the curse is finally lifted. I'm going back to see her.
Beatrix's eyes excitedly dart between Lilia and Bastion. The drink in her hand starts to float as she realizes what might happen.
So who's gonna be first mate?
Well, that's up to the captain. Lilia?
Lilia, before you make your decision, I should express that I am fully intending to stay on as your quartermaster, manage your stores and such.
Not to be ominous, but I'm never letting you leave. Lilia looks excitedly between Vivian and Beatrix. Well, I've always found the idea of having one first mate limiting.
Oh, salt you!
Vivian downs his glass of extremely nice rum like a shot of bottom shelf bourbon. I've got me cabin, and I've got me job. And as it stands right now, old Vivian's real saltin' good at his job. And you've got the most eager carrot eater I've ever seen standing right next to me. Don't go mucking up a good thing.
You're right. You are good at everything that you do. And I'd like to give you a new responsibility as my first active captain. If I've learned anything from this whole adventure, it's that magicians are the future. And I'd like it to be our new goal to start bringing them back. I think you and I, and Beatrix as well, should start training other members of the crew to use magic. What do you think, first mate? And Lilia looks at Beatrix.
Beatrix almost involuntarily clasps her hands together and says, "Yes, Lilia, that's a great idea."
I want to pick my own students, and I want an extra ration of grog.
Done.
Well, then it's settled. I can't wait to see what you all do next. But Drake Muldoon is not one to keep a lady waiting. Except for that one time where I kept this same lady waiting for 6 years. But not now.
Well said.
There's just one thing left to do. And Drake takes off his hat and pops it on Lilia's head.
Which she then turns around, now making it backwards.
Perfect. And then Drake unsheathes his cutlass, swings it around a few times, and then flips it so the hilt is facing Lilia.
I've been meaning to get better at my sword fighting.
Well, you'll have plenty of time. This is the sword of a captain, and you deserve to wear it at your side.
So how do we explain your departure to the crew?
Well, I did have one idea.
We cut to the deck of the Old Wives' Tale, where all 3 pirate crews have gathered on the deck, and a somber Bastion gazing out over all of them. Lilia, Beatrix, Vivian, and Edgar all stand behind him, their eyes downcast and their hats in their hand.
The battle was a hard one. We wanted to give ourselves a second of celebration, but Captain Drake Muldoon suffered wounds from the Queen. He succumbed to his wounds in his quarters a mere hour ago. Let us remember the most fearsome captain in all of the 7 seas.
Every pirate unsheathed their sword and lifted it to the sky.
My best friend, Captain Drake Muldoon.
A longboat with a large bundle of lumber floats away from all 3 ships, and Vivian walks to the edge of the boat, takes very careful aim, and fires an eldritch blast at the powder keg sitting on the boat, lighting it aflame.
I'll be in me cabin.
Vivian turns and heads below deck.
A few minutes later, Bastion has made his way down to the very bottom deck of the Old Wives' Tale, a small storage room where Drake awaits, a few things tied to his belt, about to dive through the porthole and into the ocean.
Well, old pal, I guess this is it.
Oh, Drake Muldoon, you're not about to say goodbye to me, are you? Because if you do that, I'm going to punch you right in the face.
No, I'd never say goodbye. I would say good show. We've had a wild ride, you and I.
Drake, I'm taking the penguins with me. We're going to travel the world and perform. That is where I'm going. You're going back to Val. None of that future prohibits us from seeing each other.
I suppose not. I can imagine that tiny island we were set up on being a fantastic staging ground. That will truly be a sight to see, and I cannot wait. Gillish people are stuffy. They could use some good grapefruit-based entertainment.
Just send word when the wedding is coming up, okay? If I have to use my trunk as a snorkel to be your best man, that is a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
You've got it, my man. And Drake clasps arms with Bastion.
Bastion pulls him in for a big hug.
Ho! Oh! Yes, jolly good.
And Drake dives out the porthole.
What? Oh!
Above deck, Lilia, gazing off the rear of the boat, detects Drake's presence in the water and sends him a message.
Yes, wings and beaks can always breach that endless foam.
Drake stops for a moment in the water, floating for a moment.
Good luck, Captain. I'll take good care of her for you.
I know you will, Captain.
And Drake is gone. Well, Captain, Where to next?
Right. First mate,
Yes, Captain.
ready the crew. I've heard Dora Dora is lovely this time of year.
Assaulting a Dora Dora. No one saw him come up, but Vivian is right next to Lilia.
Dora Dora it is. All right, you salty sea dogs. Hoist the anchor. Let loose the sails. Are you pirates or are you pigs?
Pirates!
That's what I thought.
The old wives' tale rips through the water and sails
sailed
off
off
into the sunset.
into the sunset. And that be the tale of the old wives' tale, Drake Muldoon and Captain Lilia Randazzo, and me, Kip Lockerbie, the helmsman himself.
Shut up, Kip. You're just drunk again.
I am not. That's all true, every word. You mean you don't believe me?
Of course we don't believe you.
We're out of here.
Wait, guys, wait. Oh, barkeep, pour me 2 fingers and leave the whole paw at the ready.
You got it, Mr. Lockerbie.
Can't tell a story anyone will believe.
A door in the rear of the bar busts open.
Kip, come on, it's time to go now. You can do all that on the ship. Remember, we're fully stocked up on rum now.
Aye, Captain.
Be quick about it.
Creatures around Kip Lockerbie stare at him dumbfounded as Lilia Randazzo herself calls to him.
Not so quick-beaked now, are ya?
What are all you flea bags looking at?
I set upon the ship at dawn, I wouldn't dare be late. Abilities were checked to see if I could pull my weight. For my first meal, a lemon peel, the best I ever ate. The grand old ship began the trip, our fortune we were making. Silver, copper, platinum, gold, I seek the things that can't be sold. The skies were black, the planks did crack, the wave was 80 tall. The lightning white in dead of night, a monster of a squall. Our surly lot was good and caught, but we would never fall. The royal sail was frayed and frail, the mizzen mast was shaken. Silver, copper, platinum, gold, I seek the things that can't be sold. To east, my friends, then west again, across the ocean blue. The deck is fine, the rigging line is glistening with dew. I'll count me blessed if I ne'er rest till this world I subdue. In every cove's a treasure trove,
It's all for the taking.
Silver, copper, platinum, gold, I seek the things that can't be sold. I seek the things that can't be sold.
This has been a Hero Club production, produced by Nick Williams and George Primavera, with associate producers Marty Abby Schneider and Dylan McCullum. Voice acting by George Primavera, Nick Williams, Hannah Fagerbakke, Dylan McCullum, Marty Abby Schneider, Natasha Krause, Lauren Dragon, and Benjamin Watts. Theme song by Matthew McCullum and performed by Hannah Fagerbakke. Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod and Ben Doyle for their incredible music, Mage Hand Press for their genius D&D 5th edition homebrew, and Marty Abby Schneider for his amazing artwork. Thanks for listening to Here There Be Monsters from Hero Club. We couldn't have asked for a better crew to take the voyage with us. Tell your friends if you like what you've heard, and don't forget to rate and review us on your preferred platform. We can't wait to explore further frontiers with you all in the future. Until next time.
Why'd you look at me when you did that?
For approval.
Oh, eye contact.
Great.
How are